All right, as we said, we are at the eve of a historic presidential election here in Egypt. And there have been discussions that have been unprecedented in this country, on the streets, in cafes, and in homes, about who to vote for. The other discussion, however, has been, over the last 15+ months, those who led the revolution in January and February of 2011. Those revolutionaries, have they lost the battle to the Muslim Brotherhood or to old regime members? It's a battle between realists and idealists. Our senior international correspondent, Ben Wiedemann, has this story.
It started almost a year and a half ago in a square called Tahrir. An autocrat nearly 30 years in power toppled in a mere 18 days. This week, for the first time in this land's more than 5,000-year history, Egyptians will have a say in who runs their country. Across Egypt, enthusiasm for the election has been deep and loud.
It's healthy to see that people aren't, stuck in front of the televisions watching football matches or sitcoms. It's good to see that they're once again beginning to get interested in Egyptian politics.
Nour, a student at the time, was one of the angry young men who went to Tahrir, but he won't be voting.
I would have loved to participate wholeheartedly in the first presidential elections after the Egyptian revolution. However, I can't get myself to participate simply because there are no guarantees in these elections. There are no political or legal guarantees that will that ensure that votes will not be manipulated for certain candidates.
Kareem Kamel, a young university professor, was also in Tahrir calling for the ouster of Hosni Mubarak. He will be voting.
For me, this is the ultimate embodiment of the revolution, this kind of collapse of the wall of fear. People are now free to choose. People have the freedom to elect whomever they feel represents them without the fear of retribution.
To Kareem, the old regime is gone. The time for upheaval is coming to an end.
I think we need a short-term plan that at least would bring back security, somebody with experience, and somebody who can bring back economy to acceptable levels and achieve some measure of security and some measure of social justice.
Nour, however, sees the revolution as unfulfilled. The generals who took over from Mubarak, the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, a thinly disguised dictatorship, no better than the old one.
We've seen certain things in the last year and a half where huge crimes against the Egyptian people were being committed, whether people being killed in front of the entire world or tortured. Or, the most basic example, the woman who got beaten and almost undressed in front of the entire world. And the Egyptian people have seen so much of this and have almost become desensitized.
Nour vows to carry on protesting and campaigning for radical change. Kareem counsels patience.
Social justice, which was one of the major demands, this is something that cannot be achieved in a year and a half. I think we're looking at the 5 years, 6 years, things have to stabilize.
From either perspective, change has come to the land of Egypt. Mubarak's overthrow was the easy part. The hard work, perhaps, is only just beginning.
And Ben Wiedemann joins me now live in Cairo. We're overlooking the Nile. The sun is setting, but then the sun is going to rise again on a new day for Egypt, the presidential election. Ben.
Big day. It is a huge day, and really the country has been gearing up now for 3 weeks of solid campaigning. A lot of enthusiasm, but a lot of uncertainty. Many people complaining, really the choice is pretty stark. You either pick somebody who is in some way an Islamist,
right,
or in some way a former member of the old regime.
But so people are still going to the polls. They're still debating politics openly and loudly. This isn't something we've seen in Egypt before.
Well, we've had a year and a half of it, so it has been picking up. It's not a complete novelty at this point, but certainly what's different is that this is the president. Let's not forget, this is a country with a long tradition of dictatorship going back to The Pharaohs.
Right, and we can, on
Yes,
a clear day,
on a
you
clear
can see
day,
them
they're
from
right
here.
out there.
But you were talking there with revolutionaries, those who initiated this movement in January, February of 2011, and some of them are disillusioned. They say they were tricked by the military.
Yes, their feeling is that the military really is Mubarak reincarnated.
Yeah.
And they're carrying on the same old tricks. They're worried there's going to be forgery at the polls. They're worried about the fact that at the end of the day, who's going to take over this country? Probably somebody from the old regime.
Ben Wiedemann, thanks very much. And of course, Ben and I will continue to report throughout the next 48 hours on this historic landmark day, 2 days for
2 days.
Egypt,
More
of
than that.
presidential elections. And by the way, Ben, I want to update our viewers on police officers. For the first time today, we had convictions of police officers sentenced to 10 years in prison for 5 police officers that were tried in absentia, convicted of killing protesters during the uprising that toppled Hosni Mubarak. They were sentenced each to 10 years in prison. The officers weren't there for the trial. As I said there, and the prosecutor's office says no one knows where they are. But they were each sentenced, as I said, to a decade behind bars. The prosecutor's office says the decision could be appealed. A retrial is possible. Former leader Hosni Mubarak is charged with ordering killings during the protest. All right, and we're going to have much more there on the elections and all these changes for this country a little bit later at the international desk. We have special guest Naguib Sawiris, who is, of course, a very important business leader in this country. He is going to be joining me a little bit later this hour. He is supporting Amr Moussa for the presidency, and I'm going to ask him why. Also, Nabil Fahmy, who's a former Egyptian ambassador to the United States, will be joining me as well.